All right, guys, so I was looking back at the homework assignment for Friday 3.3 on page 130. Should be problems 3 through 8, 13 through 16, 21 and 22. You do not have to do 11 and 12. Okay. I mistakenly put 11 and 12 on there originally, but 11 and 12 you do not have to do. It's just 3 through 8, 13 through 16, 21, and 22 are the ones that you need to do. Now, are there any questions on any of the assignments thus far? If there are no questions on any of the assignments, let's put the Chromebooks away. We can do that in a little bit. So you can set it to the side or on the floor. But we're going to go on and get started with the lesson. So put it out of sight. Thank you. Guys, Chromebooks away. Thank you. Thank you. All right, guys. So what we're looking at today is the slopes of parallel and perpendicular lines. Two lines are considered to be parallel if and only if they have the exact same slope. So two lines that have the same slope are going to be parallel. Two lines in a coordinate plane that are non-vertical are perpendicular if and only if the product of their slope is -1. Or really, if their slopes are opposite reciprocals. Change the sign and flip. Yes, sir? So for these here, if two lines are perpendicular, we change the sign and flip it. It's the opposite reciprocal. Now, two lines are parallel if they have the same slope. They're perpendicular if the slopes are the opposite reciprocal. Reciprocal, we change and flip for the slopes to be perpendicular. And that's really what we're going to be looking at today, to see if the lines or the slopes of the lines are the same or opposite, if the lines are parallel or perpendicular. Now, to do this for the first few problems, we need to find the slopes of the lines. Well, the equation to find the slope is our y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, guys, so we want to find out and determine which lines are parallel and which lines are perpendicular. Now, to do that, we need to find the slope, because if I can figure out the slope of each line, the slopes that are the same will be parallel, and the slopes that are the opposite reciprocal, or the opposite and flipped, will be perpendicular. So we can look at any of these here and use our slope formula, y2 minus y1 equals over x2 minus x1. Now we can find the slope of line A first. You did. So if we look at this here, line A, what are the 2 points that are on line A?
2 points that are on line A. 0, 3, and -3, 2.
0, 3, -3, 2. So what would our y values for those 2 points be? 2 and 3. So we can do 3 minus 2 or 2 minus 3, because we definitely need the 2 y values on top. Now, the x values that go on bottom have to correspond to the ones we picked. Now, because we put 3 first, what is the x value that goes along with 3? Because the point is 0, 3, since 3 went first for the y's. It doesn't matter. So I picked 3 to go first. We could have picked 2 to go first. It doesn't matter which, but once we set the y value, the x's have to correspond to it. Since I put 3 first, 0 has to go first. Since 2 was second, -3 would have to go second. Now, if we had put 2 first, -3 would go first. They have to match up. And at this point here, we could go on and plug it into the calculator, and it would tell us the answer. Or if we did it by hand, 3 minus 2 is 0 minus -3. Well, the negative and negative would make a So the slope of line A is 1/3. Any questions on this so far? Let's find the slope of line B. So guys, if we look at line B, our 2 points are 2, 0, and 0, -1. So the two y values, again, at any coordinate point, it's x comma y. The y values for these 2 points would be 0 and -1. So I need to just pick which one wants to go first or second. So we can say 0 minus -1 or -1 minus 0, either order. But depending on which one goes first will be the x value. Since I picked 0 first for y, the corresponding x value would be what? 2. Because the point is 2, 0. Since I picked the y value of 0 first, its x value has to go first as well. Now, -1 was the y, its x value is 0. And again, at this point, we could plug this into the calculator, or we can do this by hand. 0 minus -1 is the same as 0 plus 1, and negative make a positive. And 0 plus 1 is 2 minus 0 is Tyler. So the slope of line B is 1/2. So is A and B parallel? No, they don't have the same slope. Can we say that they are perpendicular? Well, no, because for them to be perpendicular, they have to have the opposite reciprocal. We have to change the sign and flip. So for 1/2, if we flip it, the reciprocal, we flip it, 1/2 would become, we flip it, 2/1, which is just 2, and the opposite of it being positive would mean it would be negative. So if we had a slope of -2, it would be perpendicular to the slope of positive 1/2. Well, 1/3 and 1/2 are not opposite reciprocals. One, because they're both positive. Any questions on this here before we look at the slope of line C? You did. So let's look at line C. So -1, -5, and 1, -4 are our 2 points for line C. So we could say -5 minus -4. Because again, how we pick the y values really doesn't matter. We just need to make sure the x values correspond to it. Now, since we picked -5 first, its x value is -1 minus . Now we could plug this in, or if we do this by hand, -5 minus -4. Well, the negative and negative do make a positive, so -5 plus 4 is -1, which is, because the negative and negative would make a positive, so we have 1/2. So line C's slope is the same as B, which tells me what? Parallel, because if two lines are parallel, they have the same slope. Same slope. Yeah, y'all did this last year. So if two lines have the same slope, then they are parallel. All right, guys. Well, we're not quite done yet, because we still have line D. Line D is the last one we're looking at. Now, line D has 2 points. One of them is at negative 3, 2, and the other is at negative 2, 0. So our two y values are 2 minus 0. The x value that corresponds with the y value of 2 is negative 3 minus negative 2. Well, the negative and negative on bottom will make a plus. On top, 2 minus 0 is negative 3 plus 2. So this here is negative 2. So the slope of line D, m is equal to negative 2. Well, 1/3, negative 2 is not the same as any of these slopes, is it? No, because it's not the same as 1/2, or 1/3. So we might be dealing with perpendicular, because 1/2, if we change it from positive to negative, we change the sign, and then flip it, it'd become negative 2 over 1, which is negative 2. So the perpendicular slope for 1/2 would be negative 2. So that tells me that what? B is perpendicular to, and C is perpendicular to. So those two lines are perpendicular because they have the opposite reciprocal slope. Their slopes are the opposite and flipped. And that's it. Questions on this here? Yes, ma'am. Yes, probably. But I do not know for sure. Perpendicular. All right. Let's look at the next one. So we have one more of these we'll look at, and then we'll move on, because I know there's two more, but we'll look at just one more. So again, what we need to do to be able to determine if which lines are parallel and perpendicular is we need to find the slope. If we have the slope of all four lines, we'll be able to tell which ones are parallel and which ones are perpendicular. And again, our formula for slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we can start off by finding the slope of line A. Now the slope of line A, we would need our 2 points, which here is 0, 2, and negative 2, negative 2. So on top we would have what? So 2 minus negative 2. On bottom we would have 0 minus negative 2. Because since we picked positive 2 first, its x value has to go first as well. Here the negative and negative make a positive, so 2 plus 2 is 4. Negative and negative make a positive, which would give us 2. So the slope would be 2. So A's slope is 2. What would the perpendicular slope for A be? Well, if we flip 2, 2 flipped would become 1 over 2, and it would be negative. So if any of the other lines have a slope of negative 1/2, they would be perpendicular. Bless you.
Thank you.
Now let's look at the slope of line B. So if we look at line B, the 2 points on line B are 2, 3, and 0, negative 1. So we can pick, say, negative 1 minus 3 on top, and the x values, 0 minus 2. Now negative 1 minus 3 would be negative over, which is 2. So the slope of line B is, so we can say A is parallel to B because they have the exact same slope. let's look at the next one. Because we found A and B, let's find the slope of C. So line C contains the points 4, 2, and 3, negative 1. So our two y values are 2 and, so we can say 2 minus negative 1. I'm just picking the two y values and plugging them in, because it's really just making sure the x values correspond to the y values that we plug in. Since we plug 2 in first, 4 would go first, and we'd have 4 minus 3. Now on top, the negative and negative would make a, which is, so C slope is 3. Is that parallel or perpendicular to A or B? No. Okay. Any questions on this so far before we look at the slope of line D? So the slope of line D contains the point negative 3, 0, and 0, negative 1, because those are going to be the 2 points on that line. Now here we would have 0 minus negative 1 over negative 3 minus, well, on top, the negative and negative would make a, so the slope of line D equals negative 1/3. So C and D would be perpendicular, because those slopes, 3 and negative 1/3, are opposite reciprocals. We changed and flipped it. Any other questions on this here? Because if we looked at it, and by definition, two lines are considered perpendicular if their slopes, the product of their slopes, so 3 times negative 1/3 is negative 1. Now, if we multiply these, we always multiply numerator to numerator, which would be negative 3 over 3, which is negative 1. So these two lines would be perpendicular to each other. Any questions on this here? Okay. We'll move on to the next part. And the next part that we're looking at is going to be dealing with perpendicular and parallel, finding the equation or writing the equation. And with this here, with perpendicular and parallel, they're going to give us a point and an equation of the line, and we need to find the line that's either parallel or perpendicular to the given line. So we want to write an equation of a line passing through the point, negative 1, 1, that is parallel to the given line. Well, if two lines are parallel, they have the same what? Slope. So we'll look at this line here, and this line is in the form of y equals mx plus b, because y equals 2x minus 3 is in slope-intercept form. So what is the slope of the equation of the line that they gave us? Because y equals mx plus b, m is the slope. So in the m's place in the equation is 2, because 2 times x, 2 is the slope. And b would be negative 3. Now, if we want to find an equation of a line that is parallel to the given one, the y equals 2x minus 3, we know the slopes are going to have to be the same. So the slope for our new line would be 2. Because if they're going to be parallel, they're going to have the same slope. Now, to find the equation of the line, we're going to use point-slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. This here is the point-slope form. x1 and y1 is a point, and m is the slope. Now, we know that the slope for our line has to be the same as the other line, and we already determined that the slope is 2. So in place of m, I'm going to write 2. Now, did they give us a point for this line? And the point is negative 1, 1. So what's the y value of the point? And the x value is negative 1, because this is always x comma. Yes. Any questions on how we got to y minus 1 equals 2 parentheses x minus negative 1? We good with this here? Now the only thing we have to do left to do is to get this equation into y equals mx plus b. We just need to get y by itself, and then we are officially done. As we just said, the minus negative 1 is the same as plus 1, so we can just rewrite that as plus 1. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to simplify the parentheses. So we're going to multiply through by 2. Well, 2 times x exactly is 2x. 2x plus 2. Is y completely by itself? No. So what do we need to do? Add 1 to both sides. Because the negative 1 plus 1 will cancel. Plus, because the 2 plus 1 would give us 3. So the equation of the line that is parallel to the given one and passes through the point negative 1, 1 is the equation y equals 2x plus 3. And that's it. That's the answer.
Just put it about your hockey game yesterday.
It's all right. Guys, questions on this here? Let's look at the next one here. So we're given the point, negative 4, 6, and we want to find a line that goes through it and is parallel to the given line, y equals 3x minus 4. So is this equation in the form of y equals mx plus b? So the slope of the line that they gave us is 3. Now, our new slope for the new line, since we want it to be parallel, would be 3. Because if they're parallel, they're going to have the same slope. They're going to have the same slope. Now, since they gave us the point, we can use y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Now we know the slope is 3 because we got it from the other equation. And really, that's all we need from the other equation is the slope. For either parallel or perpendicular, we just need the slope. We don't really worry about the rest of it. Once we get the slope, we're done with this equation here. Now the only thing left is the point, plugging the point in. And our point is negative 4, 6. So the y value is, and the x value is negative 4. And we plug it in. Well, here the negative 4 is the same as x plus 4. Now the first thing we can do to get y by itself is to distribute the 3, because we can add 6 here next. 3 times x would be 3 times positive 4 would be plus.
I need Rachel McClemens to come to the office, please. Rachel McClemens.
Next, we would add 6 to both sides because we do want to get y by itself. Y is equal to 3x plus 18. And that right there would be the equation of the line. Any questions on this here? Yes, sir. We good with this here? Y'all remember doing this last year?
Hey, Riley, you remember doing this last year?
Yeah, I do.
We're going to go on and look at perpendicular. So the one at the top, we're going to move on and look at perpendicular. Because the overall process for perpendicular is not changing too much. It's just that the slopes are not going to be the same. They are the opposite reciprocal. We've got to change it and flip. Flip. So, write an equation of the line that passes through the point 2, 3. It is perpendicular to the line 2x plus y equals 2. Is this equation in y equals mx plus b form? So we need to get it into that form. So 2x plus y equals 2. What do I need to do to get it into y equals mx plus b? Exactly, we need to move the 2x. So we would subtract it from both sides. Because 2x minus 2x would be 0. So y would equal negative 2x plus 2. So what would the slope of the original line be? Negative 2. So our new slope, since we want parallel or perpendicular, parallel would be the same. Perpendicular is the opposite reciprocal. We change it and flip it. So it will be positive, but really we can consider this as 2 over 1. So if we flip it, it'd be 1/2. Because we changed it from negative to positive and flipped it from 2 to 1/2. Because if it's a whole number, we flip it to 1 over whatever that number is. So the new slope would be 1/2. Any questions on this here? So now we're going to use the equation y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Now the slope we said is 1/2, so we're going to plug it in for the slope. Now our point is 2, 3. So the y value is 3 and the x value is 2. Any questions on how we got to this point here? Now the next thing we need to do is to distribute the 1/2 so that we can eventually get y by itself. 1/2 times x would be 1/2 x. 1/2 times negative 2 is going to be negative 1. Because 1/2 times 2 is 1. And since it was minus 2, it would be negative 1. And last but not least, we would add 3 to both sides. Negative 3 plus 3 would cancel, leaving me y by itself is equal to fx plus, and that right there would be the equation of the line. That's it. Questions on this here? Are you ready for the next one? Since y'all were doing well with parallel lines, we're going to move on to perpendicular. Yes, ma'am? Let's look at this one here. Write the equation. Yes, sir. Not yet. Let's do this here. Write an equation of the line passing through the point negative 12, 6 that is perpendicular to the given line, y equals 2/3 x minus 10. Is the given line written in y equals mx plus b form? So what's the slope, the original slope of the line? So the original slope is 2/3. So our new slope is going to be what? Negative 3 over 2. Since it was positive, the opposite reciprocal, so it's going to go from positive to negative. And we're going to flip it, so 2 is going to go on bottom, 3 is going to go on top. So the new slope would be negative 3/2. M. It's supposed to be an M. Now we could plug the slope in as negative 3/2. And our point is negative 12, 6. So the y value is 6. And the x value is negative 12. So we would have negative 12, or y minus 6 equals negative 3/2, parentheses, x minus negative 12. Well, here the negative and negative would make a positive. At this point here, we can distribute the negative 3/2, which would tell me that I have y minus 6 equals negative 3/2 x. Well, the negative times a positive would be a negative. Now we can do 3/2 times 12 in the calculator and it would tell us the answer. Or we do 12 divided by 2 is times 3 is, so 3/2 times 12 is 18. And last but not least, what do we need to do? Add 6 to both sides. And if we add 6 to both sides, y equals negative 3/2 x. Because negative 18 plus 6 will give us negative 12. Any questions on any of this here? Do we feel good with finding the equation of a line that's parallel and perpendicular and determining if lines are parallel and perpendicular? Yes, sir.
Now may I scatter?
Make sure you get the assignment down. Do y'all need to see another one with parallel or perpendicular? If y'all get the assignment down. Page 146, 7 through 14, 17, 19, and 25. And that's